Hello everyone, welcome back to another video on the TopSpin software tutorial. In this video, I will be showing you how you can copy this stacked NMR to the ChemDraw software, where you'll be labeling each of these individual proton peaks, just like you labeled the structures. In order to do that, first, you're going to copy this NMR and you're going to go to the top right of the TopSpin software where you'll click on copy to clipboard icon. Click on it once and then go to ChemDraw where you will simply right click and click on paste. Once you've done that, now you can move this stacked NMR to an empty space and you can change its size by simply going to the corner and dragging your mouse. Make sure to resize it to an appropriate height and width, which is suitable to the size of your compounds right over here. Once you have done that, now it is time to move these compounds into their appropriate NMRs. For instance, I know that the NMR at the bottom of this stacked version is that of my final product, the ester product. So what I'm going to do now is copy my labeled ester product. So I'm going to copy this and then I'm going to paste it again. And this new copied and pasted version, I'm going to drag it across and place it right in the spot that belongs to its NMR. Once I've done that, I'm going to do the same for the remaining compounds, which are my starting materials. So I'm going to do the same for J55. I'm going to copy it and paste again. And this newly copy-pasted version is going to be dragged right next to its NMR. Same for the tropine alcohol. And when you're copying these structures, make sure that you're also dragging and copying the labels, which are these letters over here. So I'm going to copy it and then paste it again somewhere. And once I paste it, I'm going to drag it to its NMR. Once I've done that, now it is time to individually label these proton peaks with the appropriate letters. For instance, I know that at the top is the tropine alcohol NMR, and the peak over here, which is at 4 parts per million chemical shift, this is the peak for the proton labeled E in my structure. So I'm simply going to label this peak as E. Similarly, I'm going to do the same for the rest of the peaks. So for instance, I know that this peak, which is around 3 parts per million, this peak belongs to the proton labeled B. So right above it, I'm going to type in B. Since I'm working with diastereotopic protons, some of the peaks are going to be really close to each other. And when I label them with letters really close to each other, it might be confusing when you're trying to analyze your NMR later on. So what I can do is first label the letters above the peak. For instance, here I'm going to label C and C prime. And then I can use the arrow tool, which will indicate exactly which letter represents which peak. So here, I know that these protons are represented by the peaks, which are going to be pointed by my arrow. And what I can do is slowly move these arrows to the appropriate peaks. Similarly, I'm going to label the protons A and A prime. And I'm going to use the arrow tool to point exactly to the peaks that represent these protons. In this way, you can continue and label the rest of the protons in your other compounds. Once you finish, it should look something like this, where each compound with its labeled protons is placed right next to its NMR, and each of the proton peaks in that NMR has been labeled with the respective protons. And remember, you can always use the arrow tool in order to specifically point out the peaks that are represented by these letters so that it does not get confusing later on when you're trying to read the NMR. Thank you so much for watching this video. In the next video, I will be showing you how you can copy the structures and the NMR from this ChemDraw into a PowerPoint slide without losing its original formatting.